Hello and welcome to Atop the Fourth Wall, where we pity the fools who would try to take on Mr. T. For those of you who are new around here, we at Atop the Fourth Wall have a special appreciation in our hearts for Mr. T, a real-life superhero if ever one existed. Tough, wise, and a badass to boot, there's no one in the world that could compete with the sheer awesomeness that is first name Mr., middle name that period, last name T. And over the last 10 years, we have beheld many a comic book that featured him. Ones based on the A-Team, of course, which cemented the image of Mr. T as a hero of the underdog and friend to all children. The awful and unfinished Mr. T comic that ended on him getting beaten by a guy named Steroid. But most importantly, we had Mr. T and the T-Force, a series that, despite the fact that we've only looked at 3 issues over the last 10 years, goes all the way back to my 13th episode in 2009. The second issue, depicting Mr. T fighting an Incan cyborg that devolves into him getting high on drugs and hallucinating battle with demons in another dimension, may in fact be the greatest comic book ever made, so you see why I'm trying to hold on to this series as long as possible. Last time, though, we discovered that there was a carjacking ring being led by Mr. Gladstone, aka Yellow-Suited Kingpin, still more dignified than Carjack from Thunderstrike #1. And yes, as was pointed out to me, there evidently was an epidemic of carjacking that occurred in the early 90s. The difference, though, is that Mr. T and the T-Force didn't have narration that put carjacking one step removed from mass murder. In any event, Mr. T tracked the carjackers back to their hideout, not just to stop their criminal activities, but to help a woman whose husband had been recruited into the organization and couldn't leave out of fear of retaliation. Also, Gladstone was prepared for Mr. T's arrival, leading us to the cliffhanger of Mr. T versus Killdozer. So let's dig into Mr. T and the T-Force #4 and see how the T-Man gets out of this one. Probably very awesomely.
Welcome to Atop the Fourth Wall, where bad comics burn. Linkara's gonna teach you all a lesson you won't learn. Brodsky, you're not the smartest. Life out, you're not an artist. Anyone who's had a bad comic published, it could be your turn. Linkara, he's a man punch, wears a birdie hat. Linkara, he has a magic gun. Where'd he purchase that? Linkara, coins, robots, Amazons and trucks. Linkara, this comic sucks. Linkara.
Mother, there is no other like mother, so treat her right. Mother, I always love her.
Before we look at the cover, I'll answer the question so many of you no doubt have. Is there a Mr. T trading card with this one? As if there was any doubt! Although, like with issue 3, it is unfortunately not the cover with some cool shiny print, but instead just a comic panel. Come on, T-Force, get your head in the game! The cover shows, of course, our true American patriot, Mr. T, in front of the US flag pointing at the reader like Uncle Sam, no doubt saying that he wants us to join the T-Force.
It is the American way.
Although really, with him in front of the giant flag, I see him more as doing a Patton thing. Now I want you to remember that no bastard ever won a war by pitying the fool. We open where we left off before, the goons driving the upgraded monster truck right at Mr. T. And hell, they were smart enough to recognize that even that might not be enough for him, so they made sure to also include a friggin' rocket launcher. Come on, sucker, that ain't my father's Oldsmobile. Oh my god, William Shatner and his daughter have come to kill him! Mr. T tosses his camera into the air while dodging the truck. You can't fight 700 horsepower, Mr. T.
Oh no, they've got a Chevy. They're so dependable.
You fools don't know whether you're wrestling or playing football. Mr. T knows how to play both. Mr. T! Boone Button is here to make the touchdown on your face! This Thursday night, The only long-distance pass you'll be making is when you toss me that championship belt. Ooh. I don't even know what the hell that line is referring to. How are they wrestling or playing football in this situation? But whatever. He spills over an oil drum full of, well, oil, and makes the truck careen out of control. The guy on top shoots the rocket, hitting the oil, and of course causing a massive explosion. That Mr. T survives, allowing him to catch his camera once more. Yeah, I think survives explosions and has the grace and speed to retrieve his camera can be added to the list. He turns his attention back to Mr. Gladstone, who's panicking and screaming that they need to save the inventory. Yeah, well, maybe you should have thought of that before you started having your guys shooting rocket launchers around said inventory. As the carjackers start driving as many stolen vehicles out as they can, Gladstone opens his office door and finds a guy trying to steal a supply of crack. We don't tolerate employee theft. Steve, I'm afraid we're letting you go. We will not be providing a reference. I'm just so disappointed. You were going to be Employee of the Month. And then he prepares to toss the guy over the edge of a higher level while Mr. T watches from below. Hey, wait! Just a second ago, Gladstone was on the same floor as Mr. T, as was his office. Then we see him open the office door, find the thief, and now he's up high, getting ready to throw the guy off?
Space is warped and time is bendable.
Did Mr. T just watch him carry the guy up the stairs? Hell, why hasn't Mr. T been trying to stop the thieves from getting away? I mean, I guess him filming everything is evidence he could give to the cops, but still. Anyway, Mr. T tries to save the guy, but some falling debris stops him before he can get underneath him. However, the guy hits some tires, which should still kill him, but apparently was enough to keep him from death. You're a crackhead, fool! It's a crack baby, fool! No one deserves to die like that. Well, considering how he hit those tires, I'm betting he still died from crack. Gotta find out who wants these cars and why. Lots of people want stolen cars. Mostly, for the parts and the money and all that. Why would there be anything more complex going on? Mr. T returns back to the boarding house he runs, one of his tenants asking about a clogged up bathtub. Okay, Mrs. Thibodeau, you don't need to take a bath now, do ya? You smell like spring flowers. Oh, Mr. T. Tee. But no, seriously, I haven't bathed in a week. You would not believe how grody I feel. Mr. T goes to Charisse, that woman whose husband worked for the carjackers, checking in to see if her husband came back to her as he instructed him. She says he did come and gave her some money, but then left in fear of others coming for him. His fears proved justified as two men in suits showed up with guns, taking the money back and threatening to hurt her and their daughter if she told anyone about it. Her husband, Denton, said he had to get them before they got him. Mr. T, you've done enough. This isn't your problem. I'm making it my problem. Somebody was threatening a mama. I wrote a song about respecting mamas, and I'm gonna be singing it to these suckers. She also says that Gladstone was working for someone else, a Mr. Big who never came in from the suburbs. Clearly she misheard, because it was actually the most nefarious criminal mastermind we've ever seen on this show, Big Dicks. Still later, Mr. T drops by the local gym, where in the last issue he had two kids start boxing training to teach them discipline. They're apparently doing very well, and he asks the kids to keep their eyes and ears open. Need to know who's behind the Porsche posse, where they took the cars from the warehouse fire. Naturally, I assumed a couple of 10-year-olds would know about that. Outside, he meets up with Justice, our only other recurring character, who was a criminal that Mr. T recruited into the T-Force. I heard something about the Porsche posse. Wait, is that seriously what they're calling themselves? I mean, might as well just be the Cadillac Club or the Kia Collective. Justice says that the guy they're looking for is named Billings and lives out in Baywood. Thanks for the help, bro. As of this minute, Plan A is in effect. A for ass whoopin'. He goes scouting around Billings' palatial mansion when a cop car drives up to him. They ask him for his license and registration, but one cop insists he hurry it up. However, the other cop knows it's Mr. T. Don't you know who this is? Yeah, it's a black man casing a Baywood mansion with binoculars. Wow! I hope your hat tastes good because Mr. T is going to be feeding it to you in a second. However, the other cop points out that Mr. T is one of the good guys and isn't casing anything. In fact, he tells his partner to call it in, which he does so. Wow, you're right. I'm the laughing stock of the station for calling Mr. T in. I love how even the local cops know not to screw with Mr. T unless you're a racist idiot like this guy. I'm sorry, Mr. T. I don't know what else to say.
You don't have to say anything, brother.
Yes he does. Sure, he was right to be curious about someone looking through binoculars at people's houses, but he specifically said a black man doing it. Pretty sure it's a racist cop, and that needs to be dealt with, Mr. T. But yeah, they apologize for the inconvenience. They're being extra suspicious because of the carjackings lately, and think it'd be best if he steered clear of the neighborhood for a while. He realizes that he is a bit conspicuous, but then again, earlier today, Mr. T walked through a fiery explosion completely unscathed. I don't think he really needs to do stealthy.
If I want to see Mr. Billings, I'm gonna need a little help from the T-Force. The T-Force awakens, if you will.
Mr. T travels to Norm's Used Cars and Trucks and talks to the owner, looking for a new vehicle.
I need a van, Norm. Something I can paint. I'm thinking black with a red stripe I can put across the side.
He actually has it painted up to look like it belongs to a pool cleaning service. Along with a jumpsuit, it allows him to drive through the neighborhood undisturbed. That night, he hops the fence at the place and encounters a guard dog, which he tosses a steak to.
Faster, son! He's got a taste for meat now!
He finds the stolen cars and overhears a conversation inside a nearby office of Gladstone talking to one of his employees. The cars are going to be moved that night by boat. It also seems like Mr. T won't have much problems with these idiots because the guy Gladstone is talking to immediately wants to start smoking some crack because he needs to take the edge off if Mr. T comes back again. Because nothing will improve your ability to fight someone like Mr. T than being high off your ass. Outside the window, Mr. T also discovers Denton, armed with a gun. Mr. T says he should go home, but Denton says that Gladstone saw the two talking before, and, since he let Denton go, assumes that he tipped off Mr. T. Thus his life is in danger unless he takes them out first.
You gonna fix it with a gun? Then what? Forget about Charisse and Darlene?
I thought they'd be better off. Well, your plan was to take out an entire criminal operation on your own with just a single handgun, so you might not be wrong there. Still, he's already gotten the lay of the land, telling him how many guards our real hero will have to deal with. Mr. T shoves him over the wall again and tells him to go home. He then takes off his hat.
Somebody's gotta show Billings the error of his ways.
Man, nothing would make me happier than if Mr. T did a little Wonder Woman twirl to transform out of the jumpsuit and into his normal clothes. As the boat arrives to take the cars, Mr. T begins his attack, easily beating up the goons.
You come to my neighborhood, pushing crack and stealing cars. How do you like it when I come to your neighborhood? It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood, 'cause Mr. T is cleaning it up.
He demands to see Mr. Big, and Billings reveals himself. What's more, Denton apparently came back around again, and Gladstone has him as a prisoner, threatening to break his neck. Also, Billings has Mr. T's camera somehow.
Mr. Big, huh? Now how did I know you were gonna be a scrawny little guy in a suit?
Because they were very clearly running out of ideas after Incan Cyborg and Killdozer. Billings wants him to come in closer, but then Mr. T spots his Rolls Royce that he had hidden in the last issue, deciding to get inside it and crash it right into the building, taking out a support beam and bringing the three down. Once they're down, Mr. T socks Gladstone in a very odd pose. It looks like he punches him, but facing away from him when he did so. It's just weird. Denton, in the meantime, has gotten the drop on Billings and now holds him prisoner. Billings offers to pay him, but Denton says that he's already been paid by getting his wife and daughter back, along with his self-respect. The self-respect that comes when you manage to hold someone hostage when they were only armed with a camera. And where are all the other guards? Did Billings only have 3 guys for all this stuff? Billings offers to pay Mr. T, who says he wants a new Rolls Royce. Sure, anything you want. What else? And he punches him. Just in case some jury lets you off with a slap on the wrist.
You know, you got a lot of mouth, and I got a lot of fists for your mouth.
He says a jury won't let him off, though, after they see the tapes of this he made. And of course, the awesomeness of a Mr. T comic provides us with astute social commentary. You ever notice, Mr. T, the cops a lot faster out here? Not fast enough. Great works of science fiction that talk about issues facing us today. Star Trek, The Twilight Zone, Mr. T and the T-Force. And so our comic ends with the tenant once again asking him to fix her drains. And he says he'll get his tools. How the hell is that the ending? Was that the thing we were supposed to be worried about this whole time? Why does he look so embarrassed about it? Jeez, I wonder how the readers were reacting to this at the time. Let's check out the letters page. Dear T-Force, I wanted to know if Mr. T has any superpowers, and by giving them his chains, what does that do? No, Mr. T has no superpowers. Bull crap, he doesn't! This comic is unfortunately another step down from the awesomeness of the previous issues, but it's still enjoyable. It starts off on a high note with Mr. T versus the truck, but that only lasts for 3 pages. And don't get me wrong, Mr. T still kicks ass all over the place, but it feels more grounded than it was in previous issues, and let's face it, we come to the T-Force for sheer raw insanity. The artwork is serviceable and exciting for the most part, but there are a few hiccups that leave me kinda confused. It's still good, but not as good. No superpowers, who the hell are you trying to kid? Next time... well, the 10th anniversary is coming ever closer, but there's still a franchise we've talked about multiple times over the last decade that deserves some follow-up. So come back next week as we begin Star Trek Timber. Well, not gonna do that again for a while. So, Morte finally kicked you out, huh? Well, pardon me for trying to use his mystical gobbledygook to actually make some videos that are scientific. Speaking of, shouldn't you be filming right now? Nope, I finished it all up. Really? How many? I am good through the 10th anniversary episode. Getting things done a little early, aren't we? Look, if past Octobers are any indication, something is gonna come up and take priority, so we need to be ready. Probably the Contest of Champions. Nah, there's a lull in that for a bit. Something about a controversy over the fight with Billy Tor and Professor Homunculus? Not surprised there. Man's a hack. Quite literally, really. Made up of various scientists grafted together. Since he can't get along with himself, thanks to all those pieces, he can't get along with anyone else either. Look, the point is, with that going on, we can sit back and relax and the contest will resume when it needs to. That's okay with me. I could use a long break. You seem jovial, all things considered. Well, let's face it, it's been a hell of a year. Hell of a 10 years, come to think of it. And after the entity battle last year, well, I wasn't really feeling like much of a champion. But then after the battle with Skarn, I think I finally know exactly who I am.